She felt a sudden chill when her younger brother, Joseph, told her she was no longer welcome in their family home. His voice was sharp, his words laced with impatience, while his wife, Esther, sat beside him, arms crossed, a smug smile playing on her lips. Their mother, seated nearby, looked uncomfortable but nodded in agreement. She reasoned that Joseph, a respected accountant in a big Nairobi firm, was the more responsible one. Keeping Naomi around, she added hesitantly, wasn't practical. After all, Naomi barely left the house. Naomi bit back the sting of rejection. She wouldn't argue. If this was their decision, she would leave. But she made a silent vow. She would never offer help again. Not long ago, Naomi had carved out a comfortable living through her online business, something she had never planned for. During her second year at the University of Nairobi, she had imagined a typical career path, securing a job in an office. But fate had other ideas. Her father's sudden illness changed everything. With his health declining rapidly, Naomi worried about who would care for him once she started working. Their mother was often too distracted with other matters, and while they hired caregivers, they couldn't be around every hour. Naomi took on the role, ensuring her father was never alone. As graduation approached, a question haunted her. What would happen to him if she was gone all day? The thought unsettled her. Determined to find a way to earn without leaving home, Naomi began exploring opportunities online. What started as a desperate search soon turned into an unexpected success. But even with financial independence, it was clear her sacrifices were quickly forgotten. Now, standing in the home she had fought to keep together, Naomi realized she was no longer needed. She would leave, but she would never forget. Naomi used the online business knowledge she had gained from her economics classes. Teaming up with friends skilled in management, finance, and technology, she launched a new venture. They rented a small office in Nairobi, creating a space for employees who struggled to work from home and for training newcomers eager to join the digital world. Despite this expansion, Naomi remained a remote worker, managing most operations from home to stay close to her ailing father. One evening, as he watched her type away on her laptop, he asked if she had sacrificed a conventional career for his sake. She smiled and assured him that her business was thriving, perfectly suited to her caregiving role. Hearing this, her father's eyes shone with pride. He saw her not just as a dutiful daughter, but as a responsible woman who had mastered the delicate balance between work and family. Naomi had an older brother named Daniel, 2 years her senior. He was the family's golden child, brilliant in school, effortlessly charming and ambitious. After graduating from a top university, he landed a high-paying job at a prestigious company in Nairobi. The family celebrated his success, calling to congratulate him. But Daniel's response was unexpected. He coldly announced that he was starting a new life in the city, cutting ties with the past. He stopped responding to calls and messages, leaving Naomi and their father confused and hurt. Even as their father's health worsened, requiring constant care, Daniel remained silent. Their mother, however, was harder to read. Naomi sometimes wondered if she was secretly in contact with him. Then one day, out of nowhere, their mother made an announcement. Daniel had finally called. But not to check on their father. He wanted $99,000 as a wedding gift. The news stunned everyone. The family's financial situation was fragile, and Naomi's mother barely made enough from her part-time job to cover personal expenses. Yet, she seemed eager to grant Daniel's request. Naomi's father couldn't hide his anger. He demanded to know why they should hand over such a large sum to a son who had abandoned them. Naomi felt a deep unease, remembering how her father had worked tirelessly to fund Daniel's education and living expenses. Now, Daniel was demanding money without a shred of remorse for his years of silence. The tension in the house exploded into a heated argument between Naomi's parents. From the next room, Naomi listened, her stomach twisting with anxiety, worried about how the stress would affect her father's health. Her mother, still unwavering in her favoritism, insisted that giving Daniel a generous wedding gift was the right thing to do. He's the eldest son, she argued, and one day he might bring grandchildren into this family. Naomi was deeply hurt. That evening, as her father sat in his chair, weary from the day's conflict, he reached for Naomi's hand. "I see everything you've done for me," he said softly. She gave him a small, sad smile. "I've always known where I stand with Mom," she admitted. Still, the realization that her mother would so readily overlook everything Naomi had sacrificed left her questioning everything. Not long after, tragedy struck. One morning, Naomi went to check on her father, only to find him unresponsive. Panicked, she called for an ambulance, but it was too late. The funeral was a somber affair, with many mourners coming to pay their respects. Naomi's mother, however, seemed preoccupied, constantly on the phone, as if distracted by matters she found more pressing than grief. Naomi's mother left most of the funeral arrangements to her, barely lifting a finger. As Naomi worked tirelessly to organize a respectful ceremony, a mix of anger and sorrow filled her heart. Then came an unsettling disruption. Daniel arrived with his fiancée, Sylvia, in flashy attire. He strolled in wearing jeans and a designer t-shirt, entirely unfitting for the occasion. Their mother beamed at them, speaking loudly about the inheritance left behind by Naomi's father. Guests shifted uncomfortably as the somber mood cracked under the weight of her words. Then Daniel made a bold declaration. Naomi shouldn't get anything, he scoffed. She just stayed home making Dad's life difficult. The words cut deep. Naomi had spent years caring for their father, contributing her own earnings to household expenses. And yet Daniel, the one who had abandoned them, now spoke as if she had been a burden. The funeral became tense. Before long, Daniel, Sylvia, and their mother left abruptly, heading off for sushi as if they had just attended a casual gathering rather than a funeral. When Naomi returned home after the service, she was met with a shocking sight: half-eaten sushi boxes scattered across the dining table. Laughter and the clinking of glasses echoed from the living room. Daniel was already drunk, slumped on the couch. "Naomi," he barked, "bring more food and drinks." Her stomach twisted in disgust. "No," she said firmly. Daniel's face darkened with anger. "I'm the eldest son," he snapped. "This house belongs to me. You don't deserve to stay here." Naomi realized then, this wasn't just about money. Daniel had come to take everything. To Naomi's dismay, her mother nodded in agreement with Daniel. "Staying with him and Sylvia seems more comfortable than being here with you," she said casually. A wave of exhaustion washed over Naomi. She had poured her hard-earned money into maintaining the household, yet her own mother and brother refused to acknowledge her sacrifices. Tired of the disrespect, she stood tall and calmly declared, "I'm leaving. And don't ever ask for my help again." Daniel and Sylvia laughed mockingly. "Good riddance," Sylvia sneered. "She's always been broke anyway." But Naomi knew something they didn't. The house legally belonged to her. Her father, understanding the sacrifices she had made, had quietly transferred ownership to protect her. Naomi had chosen to keep this fact hidden, knowing it would one day reveal itself in the right moment. She thought back to the past. Her mother had once held a stable job, but illness forced her into part-time work. At first, she dipped into her savings for daily expenses and caregiving help. But over time, her extravagant spending habits took over. Bit by bit, she drained both her own funds and what remained of her husband's. When the money ran out, Naomi had stepped in, depositing $3,000 every month to keep the household afloat. But nothing changed. Her mother continued spending recklessly, buying luxury items they didn't need. Naomi's father had been saddened by it, watching his hard-earned savings vanish. Now, as she packed her belongings, Naomi made one final decision. She withdrew every last cent of the money she had been providing. If they wanted to live without her, they could do so without her support. Early the next morning, Naomi's phone rang. It was her mother, her voice sharp with panic. "Where is the household money?" she demanded. Naomi remained calm. "The original savings were already gone," she reminded her. "The monthly support? That came from me. There's an expense ledger if you need proof." Silence. Then, in the background, Naomi heard Daniel's furious voice. "You wasted everything," he shouted. Tension escalated instantly. Daniel had expected a sizable inheritance. He and Sylvia had left behind their comfortable city life, assuming they would return home to claim what was rightfully theirs. Now there was nothing. Naomi sat on the other end of the line, listening with a mix of pity and detachment. Her mother, cornered by Daniel's accusations, scrambled to shift the blame. But then Daniel asked a question that made her falter. "What about the money Naomi was sending every month?" he snapped. "You told us she wasn't working." Sylvia gasped. "Wait, Naomi was bringing in thousands? But you made it sound like she was struggling." Confusion and panic spread between them. The truth was unraveling. Realizing she was losing control, Naomi's mother changed her tone. "Naomi," she pleaded, "come back home. We can be a family again." Naomi saw through her mother's sudden warmth. This wasn't about family. It was about money. She took a slow breath before delivering the final blow. "There's something you should know," she said gently. "Before he passed, Dad transferred ownership of the house to me. The paperwork had been finalized for tax reasons, but it was also her father's way of securing Naomi's future. Now, with the property in her name, Naomi planned to sell it. Her mother and Daniel's dreams of a cushy life funded by an inheritance were crumbling fast. Stunned, Naomi's mother and brother tried to argue, but she remained firm. She explained that she had contacted their uncle, who ran a respected real estate agency. Furious about the disrespect shown at the funeral, he promised to handle the sale himself. He would also explain everything to the rest of the family and intended to evict them if they refused to leave. Sylvia, Daniel's wife, realized they would soon be forced out with nowhere to go. Naomi, exhausted by the constant conflict, ended the call, calmly stating that she wouldn't be reachable at that number again. For Naomi, the decision was both heartbreaking and liberating. After years of being overlooked and undervalued, she finally held the power to shape her own future. Her late father's decision ensured she wouldn't fall prey to her mother's and brother's schemes. While Daniel, Sylvia, and their mother scrambled to find a new place to stay, Naomi focused on building the life she had always dreamed of. After all she had done to support the household and care for her father, it was time to seek her own happiness, free from the weight of a family that had never appreciated her. Her uncle, a stern and practical man, made good on Naomi's wishes. He hired a detective agency to discreetly monitor Daniel, Sylvia, and their mother. Reports soon came in. The trio had ended up in a cramped apartment, a far cry from the life they had envisioned. Daniel, Sylvia, and Naomi's mother took on part-time jobs to cover their basic expenses, but their reckless spending habits remained. They even resorted to borrowing from risky lenders. The detective's report suggested that things could spiral further if they didn't change their ways. Naomi felt a pang of sadness, but reminded herself that she had done everything she could for them in the past. Now, she was choosing her own well-being. She decided not to intervene. She had no intention of taking on their debts or rescuing them from the consequences of their own decisions. A small part of her felt guilty about leaving her mother behind, but then she remembered the events at her father's funeral. The dismissiveness, the cruel words spoken in what was supposed to be her home. Distance and independence were now necessary for her emotional and mental health. Despite the painful memories, Naomi believed her father would have supported her decision to move on. He had always encouraged her ambitions, backed her online business, and appreciated the sacrifices she made to care for him until the very end. With the house sold and her ties to the past severed, Naomi looked ahead to the future she had long dreamed of. She had always imagined herself living somewhere warm and vibrant, surrounded by sunshine, beaches, and rich culture. Now that her father was gone, nothing was holding her back. Her successful online business allowed her to work from anywhere, and she seized the opportunity. Before leaving, she rented a short-term apartment near the city center. It gave her easy access to the airport while she finalized her affairs and prepared for a new life. And then finally she took the leap. Naomi settled in a peaceful tropical paradise, where she could continue growing her business while embracing a fresh start. For the first time in years, she felt truly free, unburdened by family disputes and free from the constant financial demands that had weighed her down. Although her heart still ached for her father's absence, she found comfort in knowing how proud he had been of her choices. The distance helped her heal. She knew that Daniel, Sylvia, and their mother were struggling, but she also knew one undeniable truth: walking away had been the right decision.